My family ignored me my whole life and used me as an ATM for my golden child sister. But when they demanded $20K for her college, I cut them off completely, and now they're devastated, begging for forgiveness. I'm 28 years old, work in tech as a developer, and I need to tell this story because I've been carrying this shit for years, and I think I'm finally ready to get it off my chest. What happened last year basically destroyed whatever relationship I had left with my family, and honestly, I don't regret it at all. Though sometimes I feel guilty for thinking that. You know what I mean? I guess I should start from the beginning, from when I was a kid, because this whole situation stems from there, from years and years of feeling like the invisible son. I grew up in a small town, one of those where everyone knows everyone, and your entire life is basically public, and my childhood was pretty normal until my sister Rachel was born. I was like 7 years old when she arrived, and literally from that moment, everything changed. It's not like my parents abused me or anything like that, but let's just say the favoritism was so obvious that even the neighbors noticed. Rachel was the perfect child, you know, the one who got good grades without trying, the one who was cute and charismatic, the one who made my parents feel proud just by existing. I, on the other hand, was the older son who was never good enough at anything. My grades were decent, like B or B plus average, but every time I brought my report card home, my dad barely looked at it and said something like, "Well, at least you didn't fail," and then he'd go do something else. But when Rachel got an A on some stupid third-grade test, it was like she'd won the Nobel Prize or something. There were celebrations, special outings, gifts. I remember once I got straight A's for a semester. I came home super excited, thinking I was finally going to get some recognition, and my mom literally said, "Oh, that's nice, Daniel. Hey, help me make dinner, your father's going to be late." She didn't even look at my report card. That same night, Rachel brought home a drawing she'd made at school, and my parents put it on the fridge with like 3 magnets and spent half an hour telling her how talented she was. The thing is, I didn't hate Rachel. That's important to clarify. She was a kid, and it wasn't her fault how my parents acted. But it was hard not to feel resentful, you know? Especially as I grew up, and the pattern became more and more obvious. When I turned 16, I wanted to have a small party, nothing extravagant, just some friends and pizza, and my parents said there was no budget for that. Literally 2 months later, Rachel turned 9, and they threw her a huge party with bounce houses, clowns, the whole package. They spent like $500, easily. I stayed in my room that day because I couldn't even watch it. The only ones who really supported me were my grandparents, my mom's parents. They lived like 2 hours from town, and I visited them whenever I could. My grandfather was a retired carpenter, and he taught me a lot of practical things. And my grandmother always made me feel special. She listened when I talked about my interests and never compared me to Rachel. They were the ones who gave me my first computer when I was 14, an old slow thing, but to me it was a treasure. I started getting into computers and programming, and even though my parents thought it was a waste of time, my grandparents always encouraged me. When I was 17, my grandparents died, 3 months apart from each other. My grandfather had a heart attack, and my grandmother basically let herself go after that. I think from sadness or something. It was devastating for me. Like I lost the only 2 people who really saw me as someone valuable. They left me some money in their will, like $15,000, and even though my parents made weird faces when they found out, they legally couldn't do anything because the will specified it was just for me. I saved that money like it was gold because I knew it was the only thing I had. The time came to think about college, and I had plans. I wanted to study computer science at a state university that was like 3 hours from home. Nothing fancy, but it was a good program, and with my grandparents' money and some student loans, I could cover it. But when I talked to my parents about it, my dad literally told me, "Daniel, don't be ridiculous. We don't have money to send you to college, and besides, why do you want to go? You can get a job here in town." I explained that I was going to pay most of it with my grandparents' money and loans, that they wouldn't have to give almost anything, but he got super stubborn and said no. That it was nonsense. That college was a waste of time, and that they needed me to stay to help with household expenses because Rachel was growing up and things were going to get more expensive. So, let me see if I understand, I thought. They never supported me in anything, ignored all my achievements. But now, they do need me to work and give them money so they can keep spoiling Rachel. I didn't say it out loud because I knew it wouldn't help, but in that moment, something broke inside me. I decided I was going to leave anyway, with or without their approval. 2 weeks after graduating high school, I packed my things and moved to the city. It wasn't dramatic or anything. I simply told them one day that I was leaving. My dad said I was making a mistake and not to count on them if things went wrong. And my mom cried a little but didn't really try to stop me either. Rachel was like 11 years old, and I remember she hugged me and told me she was going to miss me. And that was probably the hardest part of that whole day. I moved into a horrible shared apartment with 2 roommates I'd never met before. Worked 3 different jobs, the first 6 months like waiter, cashier at a convenience store, and pizza delivery guy. And used every free minute I had to learn programming seriously. I took free online courses, read books I downloaded from wherever I could, practiced writing code until my eyes hurt. It was brutal. I'm not gonna lie. There were nights when I literally ate rice with sauce because I had no money for anything else, and days when I slept like 4 hours because I had to work and study. But it worked. After 2 years, I got my first real job as a junior developer at a small startup. The salary wasn't incredible, like $35,000 a year. But to me, it was a fortune after having lived on nothing. I was able to quit my other jobs, move to a decent apartment by myself, and start having something resembling a normal life. I was 21 years old, and honestly, I felt proud of myself because I'd done it completely alone, without anyone's help. My parents didn't communicate much with me during those 2 years. I'd call sometimes to talk to Rachel and see how she was, but my conversations with my parents were super dry and basic. Until one day, like 3 months after getting my developer job, my mom called me out of the blue. I thought maybe they wanted to congratulate me or something, because I'd told them about the job. But no, the first thing she said after hello was, "Daniel, we need you to help us with money. Things are difficult here, and you're working well now." I was shocked. Not a "how are you," not a "we're glad you're doing well." Just give me money. I asked her what had happened, and she explained that my dad had had to accept a pay cut at his job. He worked at a factory in town, and that expenses were very high. I told her I was just starting out and didn't have much extra money, and she got all dramatic saying it was my family and I had to help. I ended up agreeing to send them $300 a month, which for me at that time was a lot, like almost 20% of my salary after taxes. And that's where the pattern started. Every month I sent that money religiously, and every time I talked to my mom it was just to complain that it wasn't enough, or to ask me for more when there was some extra expense. Never a real thank you, never an acknowledgement that I was sacrificing for them. And the worst part is that when I visited town at Christmas or some holiday, I saw that Rachel kept getting everything she wanted. New clothes, materials for her activities, outings with friends, everything. But there was no money for my dad not to reduce his hours, according to them. Like 3 years went by like that. I kept growing in my career, changed jobs a couple times, and got to earning like $65,000 a year, which was pretty good for someone 24 years old without a college degree. But I kept sending that money home, and my parents already took it for granted, like it was their right to receive it. They never asked how I was doing, if I needed anything, nothing. Every call was transactional. Then Rachel finished high school, and apparently she was an incredible student, perfect GPA and all that. She applied to several universities and got accepted to a law school. Not super prestigious, but decent. The thing is that university was expensive, like $40,000 a year just in tuition, not counting housing and expenses. My parents couldn't pay it, not even close, and Rachel hadn't gotten enough scholarships to cover it all. One day, my mom called me and told me they needed to talk about something important. I went to visit them that weekend and basically, they presented the situation to me as if it were my responsibility to solve it. My dad said, "Daniel, you're her older brother, and you're making good money now. You have to help Rachel go to college. She has a lot of potential, and we can't let her waste it because there's no money." I stared at my dad and said, "Wait, when I wanted to go to college, you told me it was a waste of time and there was no money, but now it is important for Rachel to go and I have to pay for it." He got all defensive and said they were different situations, that Rachel really had talent, and that I was never as good a student as her. My mom added that, besides, I was already well established, and it was my turn to give back everything they had done for me. Everything I had done for me? I almost laughed in their faces. But I didn't say any of that, because Rachel was there, and I saw on her face that she was uncomfortable with the whole situation too. She looked at me and said, "Daniel, you don't have to do this if you don't want to. I can go to a cheaper university or look for more scholarships." And in that moment I realized that Rachel actually wasn't the problem. She was just a kid who was also a victim of my parents' crazy expectations. I ended up agreeing. I don't know exactly why. I think part of me wanted to prove I was a better person than my parents, or maybe I still had that stupid hope that if I did this, they would finally see me with pride. I told them I'd pay for the complete first year, tuition, housing, books, everything, but that after that, we'd have to see how to continue because I couldn't commit to 4 years of that expense. That first year, I sent Rachel like $50,000 total, between tuition that I paid directly to the university and money for her monthly expenses. I basically ran out of savings and had to live super tight, but I did it. Rachel called me from time to time to tell me about her classes and thank me, and at first she seemed genuinely grateful. But over time, the calls became less frequent, and when we talked, she started to sound more entitled, I guess is the word. It was no longer, "Thank you, Daniel, I really appreciate it," but more like, "Hey, Daniel, I need 500 more this month for some books." Or, "Daniel, I ran out of money to go out with my friends. Can you send me something?" My parents, meanwhile, kept receiving their monthly 300 and basically never talked to me except to remind me to transfer the money if I was a day late. No calls to see how I was doing. No messages asking if I was okay with all that financial burden. Nothing. Rachel's second year came around, and the situation got worse. She assumed I would keep paying for everything automatically and didn't even ask me. She just sent me a message saying she'd already enrolled for the next semester and needed the money by August 15th. I replied that we needed to talk because I wasn't sure I could cover another full year, and she got upset. She told me, how could I do that to her? That she had already planned everything, assuming I would support her. That I was being selfish. That hurt, because, seriously? Selfish? I had sacrificed my own savings, my own goals, everything, to give her an opportunity I was never given, and she called me selfish because I couldn't keep doing it indefinitely. I explained to her that with the $50,000 I'd given her plus the $3,600 annually I sent to my parents. I had spent like $54,000 on them that year, and that was basically my entire salary after taxes and my basic expenses. I told her I could help with something, but not everything, that she needed to look for scholarships, student loans, a part-time job, something. Rachel told my parents, and of course they took her side. My mom called to me crying, saying I was ruining my sister's life, that I was a horrible brother. How could I be so cruel? My dad was more direct and told me I was a disappointment and that clearly money had changed me. And now I was a selfish person who only thought about herself. I remember that conversation perfectly because it was a breaking point for me. I told my dad, "You know what's funny? And when I wanted to go to college, you told me it was a waste of time. You denied me any support, and I had to leave alone and build my life from scratch. I worked 3 jobs while teaching myself programming, slept on a mattress on the floor, ate rice almost every day, and now that I'm finally okay, after years of sacrifice, you feel entitled to my money. It's not enough that I send you money every month for 3 years. It's not enough that I paid for a full year of Rachel's college. Now you want more, and you call me selfish when I say I can't." My dad was quiet for a moment and then said, "Well, if that's how you feel, then maybe it's better if you don't come for Christmas this year." And he hung up. But I did go for Christmas because, I don't know, I guess I still had that idiotic hope that things could get better. It was horrible. There was a small family party, some uncles and cousins, and during the whole dinner, I felt this thick tension in the air. Rachel barely talked to me, my parents acted civil but cold, and at some point after dinner, my dad was kind of drunk and started making comments. We were in the living room and someone asked what I did for a living, and before I could answer, my dad said, "Oh, Daniel is a programmer or something like that. He spends all day in front of a computer." He made a mocking face and added, It's not a real job like what we had at the factory, but well, that's how young people are now. Everyone laughed uncomfortably and I felt like I'd been slapped. But I didn't say anything because I didn't want to make a scene. Then later, someone commented something about how expensive college was now, and my dad said, "Yeah, it's super expensive. That's why Rachel had to leave her law career, because a certain person decided they didn't want to help their family anymore." He looked directly at me when he said it, and I felt my blood boiling. I couldn't stay quiet anymore. I said, "Dad, I paid for a full year of her education, $50,000 of my own money, money I earned, working hard at that job you say isn't real. I offered to keep helping with something, but I couldn't cover everything by myself, and instead of looking for other options, you decided to make me feel guilty." He got up from his chair and told me, "Don't talk to me like that in my house. You're ungrateful and selfish. All you do is work on your computer and you think you're better than all of us." My mom tried to calm the situation, but I was already fed up. I told him, "You know what? You're right. I shouldn't be here." I got up, grabbed my jacket, and left. Rachel followed me to the car and told me she was sorry, that she didn't want that to happen, but I was so angry and hurt that I just told her everything was fine and left. I drove back to the city that same night. Like 3 hours on the road, and the whole way I was thinking about all the times they'd made me feel insignificant, all the times they ignored my achievements, all the times they used me financially without any real gratitude. And I made a decision. The next day, I canceled the automatic transfer of the $300 monthly to my parents. I blocked their numbers temporarily because I knew they were going to call when they saw the money didn't arrive. And sure enough, the messages started. First from my mom asking if there was an error, then from my dad demanding I send the money, then from Rachel asking me to reconsider. I didn't answer anything for 2 weeks. Finally, I sent my mom a message telling her I wasn't going to send money anymore, that they had to solve their finances on their own, and that I needed space from the family. I told her it wasn't out of hate, but because I needed to protect my mental health and my resources, and that I hoped they could understand it someday. My mom responded with a super long message, basically saying I was the worst son in the world, that after everything they'd done for me, this is how I repaid them, that my dad was right about me, that I was being incredibly selfish and cruel, and that Rachel was devastated because now she wouldn't be able to continue studying. She ended by saying that if this was my decision, then they didn't consider me part of the family. That hurt. I'm not gonna lie. But I also felt this enormous relief, like they'd finally taken a weight off my shoulders. I cried that night, but it was more liberation than sadness. You know what I mean? Rachel kept sending me messages from time to time. At first they were all angry, but after a couple months, they started to be more, I don't know, reflective, I guess. She told me she'd had to drop out of law school because without my help she couldn't pay for it, and that she'd tried to get student loans but her GPA had dropped a lot the second year. Probably because she was more focused on parties than studying, but she didn't say it like that, and didn't qualify for good loans. She told me she'd moved back with my parents and that things were tense there. Part of me felt bad for Rachel because, yeah, she was a victim of my parents too, but another part thought she needed to learn this lesson, that not everything in life comes easy, and she had to work for the things she wanted. I didn't respond to those messages. Like 6 months after all this, my dad lost his job at the factory. Apparently there was some incident. I never knew exactly what happened, but my mom sent me a message saying he'd been fired, and they were in a terrible financial situation, and please reconsider helping them. I didn't respond. Then my dad himself called me, and I answered because I was curious what he would say. His tone was completely different, none of the pride or arrogance from before. He told me he needed my help, that things were very bad, that they had accumulated debts and he didn't know what to do. He didn't apologize for anything he'd said or done, he just asked me for money. I told him no. I told him that he himself had said they didn't consider me part of the family, and that I was respecting that decision. He started getting angry again and saying I was resentful and vindictive, but I just told him I wished him the best and hung up. Then I blocked his number. That was like a year ago. I haven't talked to my parents since then. Rachel sends me messages every so often, but they're weird and awkward, and I respond in a polite but short way. She told me she got a job as a legal assistant in town and is saving to maybe try college again in the future, but something cheaper. I told her I was glad for her, and I meant it. As for me, things have been going incredibly well. Without the financial burden of supporting my family, I was able to really save for the first time in years. I got a promotion at work, and now I make like $85,000 a year. I started taking online business classes because I eventually want to start my own tech company. I met someone, a girl who also works in tech, and things are going well there. I have real friends, people who appreciate me for who I am and not for what I can give them. Sometimes I feel guilty, especially when I think about Rachel and how her life took a different turn. But then I remember that I'm not responsible for my parents' decisions, nor for the expectations they put on me without my consent. I remember all the times they made me feel inferior, all the times they took my help for granted without any gratitude, and the guilt goes away. 2 weeks ago, I got a message from my mom. It was her birthday, and I guess she was sentimental or something. She told me she missed me, that the family wasn't the same without me, and that she hoped someday I could forgive them. She didn't mention anything about understanding why I walked away, didn't apologize for how they treated me. She just said she forgave me for abandoning them, and that when I was ready to be part of the family again, they would receive me. The irony of her saying she forgave me, as if I were the one who did something wrong, almost made me laugh. I didn't respond. Maybe someday I will. I don't know. But for now, I'm focused on my own life, on building something for myself, and on not letting the toxicity of that relationship drag me back. Did I do the right thing? Honestly, I don't know. There are days when I think maybe I was too harsh, that maybe I should have given them another chance. But then I remember that I gave them chances for years, and that each time they just used me more. So I guess I did what I had to do to protect myself, and that's enough for now.